All right, let's dive into a really big topic today, one that gets brought up a lot when people talk about the LDS Church. We're asking, are its teachings on family and obedience a beautiful promise, or are they a form of coercion? Let's get into it. So, it really all comes down to this one question. When the church teaches that certain actions are necessary for families to be together forever, what is that really? Is it a call to faithful obedience, or is it something else? Something more like psychological pressure to keep people in line? Now, this is the critique in its rawest, most potent form. The argument that your family is essentially being held hostage. I mean, that's a heavy, heavy accusation, right? The idea that your most precious relationships are on the line, and if you step out of line, God will take them away. You can see why this is such a powerful claim. Okay, so let's get into the first big idea here, the core misassumption, looking at fear versus covenant. The perspective we're exploring today argues that this entire hostage critique is built on a fundamental misunderstanding. It suggests that critics are applying the wrong lens, looking at a complex adult theology through the eyes of a child, which changes everything. So let's break this down. You've got two totally different ways of looking at the exact same teaching. The critic's framing is super simple, right? Obey or you lose your family. It's a threat. But the doctrinal view is, well, it's a lot more nuanced. It says an internal family isn't some reward you get for good behavior. It's a natural extension of your relationship with God. And you just can't force people to be unified forever if their hearts are pointed in opposite directions. And that leads us to this really key concept, covenantal obedience. This is a potential game changer for the whole conversation. The idea here is that you're not obeying because you're scared of what will happen if you don't. You're making a promise, a covenant, because you trust God. It's a choice rooted in love, not a reaction based on fear. And this is backed up by scripture, isn't it? There is no fear in love. This line is sort of the North Star for this whole argument. It means that ideally, love is the engine driving everything. If you're feeling fear, this argument goes, you're actually missing the point of the doctrine. Fear is a bug, not a feature. You know, this actually gets into some really interesting psychology. Think about it. A kid might hear these ideas and get scared. Totally understandable. They might worry about being abandoned or punished. But the argument here is that you can't judge a complex adult theology based on how a 7-year-old's brain processes it. The whole point is to grow out of that fear-based view and into something based on love and understanding. All right, next section, a divine warning. Are we talking about threats or are we talking about consequences? This is another huge piece of the puzzle. When we hear divine warning, is the intent to control us with threats, or is it simply a description of reality, just laying out spiritual cause and effect? Okay, you've probably heard this analogy before. The idea that the church is acting like a mob boss. Nice family you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it. But when you actually break it down, does that comparison hold up? Well, let's see. A mob boss keeps you in with violence, right? They won't let you leave. They operate in secret. The church, on the other hand, well, you can walk away anytime. There's no physical enforcement. All the covenants are public knowledge. The analogy just doesn't really seem to fit. So if the mob boss analogy is out, what's a better one? Well, the source we're looking at offers this. A parent telling their kid, hey, don't touch the stove, it's hot and you'll get burned. Now think about that. Is the parent being coercive? Are they threatening the child? No, they're warning them about a very real danger that exists completely separate from them. It's an act of love, of protection. And this right here, this is the absolute core of the whole thing, the difference between coercion and consequence. Coercion is when someone says, do this or I will hurt you. It's an outside force acting on you. But a consequence is just reality. It's if you choose X, then Y will naturally happen. The entire argument hinges on the idea that these teachings are all about consequences, not coercion. Okay, but let's be real for a second. What about the really harsh stuff? The language in the temple, for example, that sounds a lot like a threat. This next part tackles that head on. Let's re-examine Satan's role. All right, there are 4 points here that try to reframe this. First, it's not a threat. It's a statement of law. Satan is just revealing the natural outcome of rejecting God's protection. Second, just because a warning is severe doesn't make it coercive. A firefighter screaming at you to get out of a burning building isn't coercing you, they're trying to save you. Third, and this is a big one, these words are meant to reveal Satan's character, not God's. It's like he's showing his true colors so you know exactly what you're rejecting. And that leads to the 4th point.
This kind of brutal honesty is actually a form of mercy.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Satan's line is harsh because it reveals the nature of evil, not the character of God. So the shock value isn't there to scare you into obeying God. It's there to show you exactly what you'd be choosing instead of God. It puts a spotlight on the alternative.
So let's bring this all together. At the end of the day, it seems like the debate isn't so much about the specific words of the doctrine. It's about the lens you're looking through. It really comes down to two totally different frameworks. And here they are side by side. You got the critic's framework, which tends to look at this through a psychological lens of fear, assuming any negative consequence must be a threat. And then you have the source's framework, which is all about agency and covenant. In that view, consequences aren't threats, they're just spiritual reality.
So what are the big takeaways from this perspective? Let's run through them. 1. Real obedience has to be a free choice, powered by love. 2. If you're just complying because you're scared, that doesn't really count, spiritually speaking. 3. Covenants are invitations, not demands. 4. Consequences are just reality, not coercion. And finally, the big one, God respects our agency, completely and totally. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on, and this goes way beyond any single religion. In any belief system, any philosophy that says our choices have real consequences, where is that line? When does a loving warning cross over and become a coercive threat? Something to think about.